is Latvia's leading white hat hacker. That's quite the claim. And an IT policy activist. Okay, lifelong command line enthusiast, owner of a particularly ancient laptop, yeah, I mean, you know, democracy. It's all the usual stuff, right? Democracy, freedom, hacking, etc., etc., etc. And the title of this talk is A Big Bad App. Welcome to Corporatocracy. We live in a world where major corporations decide how we act with digital systems. Technology isn't neutral, and basically we're being fucked. And, you know, I don't like it, you don't like it, and yeah, they have far more control than I think that they would care to admit. And I think Kirill is probably going to explain hopefully how to fight back. Take it away. Round of applause, Mr. Kirill.
Thank you so much. This talk is a bit different. I'm not gonna hack anything for hacking. You can come to a different talk that was supposed to be today at 12 at stage Andromeda. Me and Iceman are gonna do RFID hacking talk. Gonna be super fun. But this is a political talk. This is talk as rightly presented by the herald before me about democracy, about our world. Those of you who have talked to me, who have known me for a year, 2, 5, or 10 years, do know that I live without a phone number, just to challenge the system, but also for the peace. No one is calling you, no one is trying to scam you over SMS, nothing like that. So this talk is in 3 parts. I'm going to rant a lot, I'm going to critique the system, of course, and I'm going to try to give a bit of info of how to fight. Right. So this is how I look over the weekdays with the student and everything. But I do love to hack. I do love to hack both social systems and physical systems, everything from technical stuff up to policy. Right. And this talk is here today not because this is a camp about hacking and camp about security, but because you are hackers, and I am counting on you here in the audience to hack the system. So, are we all just a bunch of big bad hackers? Well, I don't think so about me, right? As you know, hacking in academic or rather corporate cybersecurity refers to misuse of devices like computers, smartphones, you know, breaking stuff to corrupt systems, gather information on users, steal data, and so on. People here in this camp, of course, know that is not true. Not just entirely not true, it's completely untrue. We hack because we care. We hack because we want to change the system, because we want to improve everything for our own benefit and for the benefit of the society, right? So hacking, of course, is subverting a system in unintended ways, be it RFID system, be it society, or be it the human body. Now, I started doing stuff with computers when I was 7 years old, and everything was super simple back then. Now, I couldn't find any of the okay, I'm going to just turn this off. Let's do that. Yeah, that's what you get for getting a public phone book, right? Sorry about that. This is a good example of why I don't have a phone number, right? The people, I'm not used to this stuff. Yeah. Okay, there we go. You do it like that, and and we're out. Yeah, offline. Amazing, love the feeling. So, I was doing computer stuff since I was 7 years old. I couldn't really load any of the tapes into my computer, so I wrote this program from scratch. I didn't try if it interprets. That's basic, right? You've heard about it. And this is my second computer, actually. The first one was given to me by a family member who soldered it himself, right? So, but even though back in the day, at least in the Soviet Union where I was born, I live in Latvia. Back then it was Soviet Union, unfortunately. And even though you had to solder your own computer to get it, once you got it, you got it. It's simple. Then you just code, just make stuff, you just pirate stuff and it just works, right? It was pure pleasure creating stuff like that, right? I didn't understand at age 7 what the hell does COS or SIN mean, but you know, I got my parents to buy me this book about programming, and it was written there. I did some samples, I changed some numbers. You know, that's how you learn. That's how you tinker. And it was really nice, pure pleasure creating stuff, and everything was amazing. You know, maybe because I was a kid, but I do believe because life was, you know, easier to understand and easier to navigate. Now, these days, I personally believe that everything seems a bit broken. The system is broken itself, starting from the computer programs, starting from the apps. Now, why are apps broken? And about half of the talk, we're gonna kind of go through this topic. Why are apps broken? And of course, the number one reason is there are honest-to-God bugs. I think all of the screenshots here are from my daily life. Now, I not only don't have a phone number outside of a camp, I also don't just use JavaScript in browsing, many cool stuff comes with that when you do that. I don't have cookies, so Google hates me or doesn't know I exist. So most of the screenshots are really my stuff. So here I was trying to order something. I wanted 176 of something, and it said, no, you can like have between these two numbers. And that happens, right? That happens. Why? I don't know, right? I admire people who build houses, who build buildings, multi-story, 5-level buildings, 9-level buildings. How that doesn't crash, I don't know. In programming, I wouldn't trust any one of us, including myself, to build a multi-story house, right? We care, I think, especially audience here. But many of the corporate programmers don't really care. You know, there are testers for that and pen testers for security, right? So this happens. Then, of course, there are paywalls as well these days. Now, for paywalls, how many of you don't like paywalls? One. Oh, okay, 80%. 85, thank you. How many of you think there is some merit to having paywalls in the web these days? Okay, about half of the previous. Okay, about 40%, yes. And I'm with you. I don't like them, but I understand that, especially in these days where we do have a lot of fake news coming in, quality journalism is important. Now, the question is, how do we finance that? I would love, at least in the EU, to have like a intergovernmental, inter-EU program that finances that. We don't have that, so, you know, we have this. But it is annoying as hell for a web user, right? Especially I was living without a banking card for many years. I started using one like 5 years ago. It was a bit hard, right? That's another thing why stuff gets broken. You know, money, but maybe reasonable request for money. Then we have money grab, of course. Now on your right, what you see is a screenshot from an app. Where I live in Latvia and in neighboring country of Estonia as well, there's this app called Ride, and you can rent like red e-bikes like this, right? And you can ride around. Usually you do that for short rides. You don't ride like 20 kilometers. They are super small, like that. So you use it for 5 minutes, 7 minutes, right? And what the app does is it rounds the ride to the nearest minute, up, of course, right? But it makes sense, right? If you ride just 5 seconds, they got to pay the card fee, card processing fee, all that stuff. Okay, that's fair. Right? Now, some things have changed. This year I was using it as well. So, and I was trying to return. So here you see a video. So when you return, you have to take a photo and press a button, and then it says, "Please wait, we're updating your current location." So, and for some reason, starting this year, they decided that they need to do their backend GPS stuff before you stop your ride, not afterwards. So, quite a good business model, you know, makes more money. Now, here, this video, I didn't want to have the full screen recording, but in this video, even though I had nice 10 seconds left when I started to return the bike, which means I would have to pay 14% more, I ended up paying 40% more because it took me like 4 or 5 minutes to actually finish the ride. Yeah, I overpaid 42% in this particular case. Now, they didn't really fix it, but they did introduce a start fee as well. So you add 1 more minute at the beginning as well. So nothing personal, just business, right? I call it money grab. Now, why else don't apps work sometimes? Now, there are apps that are specifically made, in my personal opinion, to be working offline. For example, have you seen the app on your left? Anyone? Yeah, about 10 people. On your right? Nobody. OK. This is made in South Korea, by the way. Quite a cool app, it was, at one point. So let's start with XE. It's a currency conversion app. So you go, so as a European, let's say I go to Canada, or I go to South Korea, and I don't have internet, or I don't want to pay €9 per megabyte of internet, or gigabyte, whatever. So you preload everything, and it works. Now, if you do that now, that's what you get. You get the loading screen forever. Why? Why did it change? I have some ideas. The other app, it's an offline music player. I've been using it since it came out. It's amazing because it supports different kinds of storage than Apple built-in stuff. Superb. Now, if you launch it offline, it will not start. It doesn't even show a logo. Logo I put on there so you know what I'm talking about. It just shows a blue screen of death, or blue screen of not starting. So this is happening since last year. And there have been other shenanigans. Like before this happened last year, you couldn't select a song from your offline library if you're offline. You could only click next and randomly select a song. And it's not a feature, it's not documented or anything. So they fixed that, but now it's this. Now, why is it happening? Data. This is not so much about grabbing money directly, but about being able to collect data and process it and work with it. And we're going to talk about that a lot as well. Now, AI is here, right? Another thing. Anyone ever had experience when you were talking to a chatbot and chatbot pretended to care? Most of you, yeah. Why? Why does it pretend to care? Because companies say they care. Do they? Probably not, but they told the chatbot, you have to tell the user that you care, right? In fact, the chatbot sucks so much that in fact people are writing guides on how to navigate around that crap. Right? This is an older guide before ChatGPT era. So AliExpress has this helpful chatbot that allows you to save time, and there are articles on the web. How can you work around that to actually get what you want to do? I take pride in the fact that this is the only mention of AI in my talk. So, URL shorteners. They were supposed to be automatable. Remember? Those of you who are 30 plus in age, yeah? Remember the days when you had a URL shortener that meant you can put it in a script, in a bash script in your program, and it just, magically using 3xx HTTP redirect connects somewhere. Now it's this, like, why? What's happening there? What's the problem? Not enough bandwidth to send like 50 characters of redirect? Probably it's some kind of data automation, data gathering stuff, right? So, but about me, I must admit I draw all of this to myself. There's this one of the nicer movies called I, Robot from 2004. There is this scene where Detective Spooner comes to the scientist, Calvin, and says, I must be like a malfunctioning magnet because your shit keeps malfunctioning around me. That's how I feel every day, basically. Internet isn't really working for me. I tried to get a phone number once, and they gave me a contract to sign. And one of the points in the contract was that customer requests to be sent ads, not agrees to, customer requests to be sent ads. So I said, let's change that. I'm not really doing that. And they told me they're going to talk to corporate. 2 days later, I come back to them and they say, nope, can't change it. All our customers are requesting to have ads. So, sorry, no phone number, right? And sometimes I'm left without food. I get blocked on different delivery apps for using fake or throwaway phone numbers. Yeah, so you can you have to make your food yourself, like in a camp, which is fun, I guess, right? Now, this is happening in major way because companies, in many cases, only pay for so-called happy path testing. I'm not talking about security testing here, I'm talking about functional testing. And most of the cases that I mentioned have one thing in common. People assume stuff. Let's say you're a big corporation and you have, or you plan to have 500 million users. And do you really care to spend additional 50,000, 100,000 euros to do the full test. If your statistics show that, out of 500 million, 0.01 million is not gonna be able to use the app. It's gonna crash, it's not gonna work, you don't care, right? And this is why these cases not only go unnoticed, but even when you as a user, as an expert user, as an expert IT person, submit it to them, they say, yeah, no, just enable GPS, just share your contacts, just get a phone number. It's so easy, right? Now, for those of you in the audience anyone uses Firefox for desktop still? Yeah, a lot of you, right? Even though the privacy thing is kind of shaky right now, right? So you can write down this link, and it only works from Firefox for desktop, right? I just wanted to have this example. It doesn't work for mobile or anything like that. I wanted to have this example that even open source software that is used by many, many hackers, many, many technical people, has blind spots. It has assumptions. If you're going to type that into your Firefox for desktop, it's going to show you an empty error message. Just a button, try again, or whatever, and the error message is completely empty. A bug, right? It's not a critical bug, not a buffer overflow or anything, but that's how it works, right? In full coverage testing, there is no way that this error message would stay undefined for almost 5 years now, and yet here we are. Now, to start to conclude the intro part of how I got here, I had the need to register a domain in Italy a couple months ago. And the need was legally the need of my company, not my own need. So, and my company is called Roman numeral 1, SIA, right here. So there's a longer story behind that, but just to be completely clear, there is no UTF fuckery. It's just capital I, right? It's just capital I, ASCII, everything normal, and SIA simply means limited. And the short story is that government forced me to have a company name if I wanted a company. I don't like to be forced, so I created something, just as short as possible. That was the idea, right? So that's my company name, legally. And so I tried to register the domain, and the domain is different, of course. I didn't want to show you the real domain, so this is just another one. And it says invalid format, right here. Yeah, so okay, maybe they just need the company name without the limited, just the name. So I enter just Roman numeral 1, at least 2 words. So now they need 2 words. Didn't work here. Now they say the words. Okay, so I think sometimes some business partners, there is a tradition in many countries that you put the name in quotes. And once again, ASCII characters, no UTF magic, right? I put it in quotes. Now it says wrong language. I'm a magnet of this kind. This just keeps happening to me. So I ended up I needed the domain, and I didn't have the time. So I ended up registering, because it was a drop catch domain, I ended up registering the domain with the company name that spells out, your system doesn't allow me to enter my real company name. That's the name I have in the registry. Nothing else I could do. I mean, my hands were tied completely, right? So this isn't accidental in many cases. It's designed that way, right? One of the dictionary definitions of the word bad is of poor quality or a low standard. But today I want to talk about the other definition of the word bad, which is failing to conform to standards of moral virtue or acceptable conduct. This is what we're here to talk about. Now, and just to gather my thoughts, I created an ontology for this talk, and I just loved the graphics so much that I wanted to share it with you guys as well here in the audience. So I'm gonna show you a quick overview of how everything's connected and how bugs lead to shitty software. We covered that already, right? But there are other parts of the mosaic that brings us to where we're gonna go as society, unfortunately, right? So in some of the cases that we saw, software is actually users' enemy, right? It's not just a bug, software fights you. It tries to make it harder for you to do what you want to do. You want to register a domain? No, you need like less words, more words, no quotes, the sentence, and then it works. And I believe that this mostly comes from lawyers and lawmakers or bureaucracy, because there are some requirements that in many cases were meant well, but in the end, they just, they're implemented badly. Like, GDPR is a good example, right? It was meant well, and it's implemented kind of how it's implemented, right? Cookie law is a great scam, right? Now European policymakers these days, they're telling, no, we didn't write that. That's a scam by the ad companies to have the pop-ups, right? We didn't require that, right? So, but that's where how we get there, right? Then on the other side, we have enshittification. That's a term coined by Cory Doctorow. We're going to talk about that in a second. And that is driven by investors' greed. So people that put money into a company, into an app, want more money back. And that also leads to software as user's enemy. For example, when you take a ride and you try to finish that ride, then you have to wait a couple of minutes to make more revenue, right? Bring more shareholder value. You're contributing while you're waiting and wasting your time there. Now, then there's surveillance capitalism. That's a term coined by Professor Zuboff. I'm going to talk about that in a minute as well. And that also leads us to software as user's enemy, right? For example, when apps don't work offline because you can't really collect real-time data if app isn't online, right? Now, and there's corporatocracy. Now, all of this stuff on the screen right now, it works as it is, right? But if we want, well, we don't want to, but if we were to arrive at corporatocracy, there's one more component missing, and that is powerful people. Like, say, you have a bunch of money, so you decide, why don't I buy a social network to promote my agenda, right? So that's how you get to corporatocracy slowly. And the final component, final missing component, now this, as it is, would crumble. It would just fall on its side in a year or two, if not for the users. So users are unfortunately forced to support this system. Yes, right. People here, how many of you have a Mastodon account? Yeah, 40%. Yeah, thank you for having a Mastodon account. I also have a couple of those. So but those of you that don't, you might have a different social network account. I'm not going to ask. Some of you may be ashamed of that, but don't be. You're not at fault here. If you're used to, it was hard for me to leave Twitter. Elon helped me. At first, he banned my mobile app, and then he banned my account altogether. All after buying like 0.000 some percent of Twitter from me in the buyback. Right. So he helped me, but it was really hard. You don't really want to restart building your social network, and that is why open standards and open communication protocols are really important. But this is where we are now. Globally, right? So let's go talk about all that. Oh yeah, and of course there is, I postulate here that there's a link between shitty software and corporatocracy, right? They kind of help each other, unfortunately. Now the other part of my title of my talk is the word big, and that's the user's part from the graph, right? This talk is about big, bad apps, because those are the apps that can afford to be bad in the sense that we defined previously, right? Realities of scale. Even support for these apps is bad because they can provide bad support or can provide no support at all, and because they can save money on it. Now, I've seen. So, did we crash? Oh yeah. This happens. It's an old laptop. This sometimes happens. So I'm going to give it 20 seconds, and then I might reboot it. This presentation has more videos, which is one, than usual, which means it's a bit hard for the laptop. And I'm gonna take care of that in a second. Right. So in the next slide, what I have is an ad for a company called Bolt. It's a ride-sharing company, how they call themselves, but it's a taxi company basically, and they are offering. I think 70% discount to businesses that's going to sign up. So my company, the one with the name, has been trying to sign up for 3 years now to use their services. And my company does have a phone number because we want people to call us, not unlike myself. But it just doesn't work. Oh, there we go. Stuff is working, kinda, a bit. So this is okay. Ignore that for a second. So And they're just saying my number is banned. I actually have this party trick, I come up to two people at the party and I say, give me 4 digits, give me 4 digits. I combine the digits, type in the app, and it says your account is banned. Whatever the digits. I got to their support once, a couple years ago, got through to their support. They looked at some data, some systems, and I said, a serious crime has been committed using your phone, your physical device. And I did buy a used phone back then, right? And you will never be able to use our service with that phone. You need a new phone. So I bought a new phone from a telco, and I tried on there, same stuff. Now, as a hacker, I completely understand what's happening back there, but legally I can't really show that because it's not going to fly in court. I have to pretend that I don't know what's happening, and we have to go through all the GDPR process. There we go. Very nice. So this is how it works. This is our company phone. Your account has been blocked. Please contact us for further details. Whatever digits you type in, right? And the lack of support and bold business model as such is a great example of gentrification by Cory Doctorow, right? At first, investors come with the money, then they make it less appealing to the service providers, pays them less money when the market has dried up in other places. Then they make it less appealing for users, again, drive up the prices. And in the end, they just screw everything up. They remove the support, make it hard to use, just to squeeze more data, squeeze more money out of the users, right? So that's how it works. And specifically because there's no support, which is why we are currently in a court battle with this bold company from Estonia for trying to open an account with them, which is a bit crazy, but that's where we are, right? So I already mentioned bureaucracy, and bureaucracy basically, it's bad altogether. I don't love it. But if we talk about IT, we're done here. But it is usually the Bolt slide that does this, by the way. So there must be some people from Bolt in the audience. Now my screen is blank here, but the power button is up. Anyway, I'm going to deal with that while I'm going to continue. So, yes. So this is obviously problematic, right? We can't really have that. Right. So the next thing that I want to talk about here, let me just do raising skinny elephants is utterly boring here on the keyboard. Didn't work. Okay, it's a hardware failure. That's okay. Oh, reboot. Very good. Okay, so in a couple minutes. Right. So why is it that way? Professor Zubov created this idea of surveillance capitalism. Anyone has read her book? Yeah. Okay. So, just a bit. Yeah. I haven't finished it either. It's a large book, but I did bring, I think, the most important concept for you here today. And the interesting part is, I'm gonna, after my file system checker does the job, I'm going to show you the slide. So the interesting part is that actually, collecting data isn't bad, according to her. Just the act of collecting data is okay. Let's imagine you're a startup. You're a two-person startup in the 90s. You create a search engine, right? And you want to provide better service for your customers. You don't want to, make money of them. You don't even have a business plan. You just want to improve it. So you collect some data, and you put the data back into your business for the sake of improvement. Or for example, you see that, I don't know, back then the metrics were really basic. So you see that 80% of your customers use enter instead of the mouse to search, right? And then you think about that, okay, let's do a small test about how that works, right? And how we can work with that. So that's actually okay. Now the problem is, what's happening afterwards? What's happening, with the so-called data surplus? And you're going to have that on the screen in 10 seconds, I think. Let's discard that. Okay. Okay, this is where we are. I did miss a couple slides. I'm going to go back to them in a second, right? So this is where we are. That's the process I'm talking about, right? So you have your stuff. You see how users are working, and you try to understand the behavior, and that leads to improved service. In this example, improves search results. Now, the problem that we have is there's data exhaust here. So the render behavior, when you analyze what users are doing, there's like this garbage data that no one needs. It just goes to nowhere. Now, this data exhaust is called behavioral surplus. And on your left, you see the full picture. This is the good stuff. And then behavioral surplus is this secret stuff here that's called rendered behavior. So these are the new means of production. You know, like back in the day, it was capital or whatever. These days, it's user data. And so it's behavioral surplus. You have it here. I'm going to zoom that in for you. So, right, you have it here. And then you try to create prediction products. And they're actually markets in future behavior. They're not really advertised publicly, but they're not really hidden. If you want, you can find them, you can buy the data. You can buy the data that allows you to predict how groups of people will react in the future. You can predict how individuals will react in the future. And what comes with that is, of course, surveillance revenues, which fuels the machine from here, which, you know, it's self-sustainable. Plus, you have profits here coming out right there, right? So this is how it works. This is how surveillance capitalism works, how it fuels itself. Now, I'm gonna, okay, I don't have the correct clock anymore. Maybe I should change my BIOS battery. Let's use this. Okay, I'm gonna go back to a couple more examples I wanted to do before, after this, right? So I didn't finish about bureaucracy. Now, this is not a montage. This is an actual screenshot. I just opened the page, and they told me, you know, we want to track you. Yes, or do you want to learn more? Learn more, of course. So I press on learn more, bam, terms of conditions. And then I try to read how they can track me. But before I do that, I have to have email verified, and I have to agree to cookie usage. Then I can understand how that's going to be used, right? So good intent, bad result. Speaking of that, for an unrelated reason, I ended up having a bunch of different certificates, started of different cybersecurity certificates, starting from ones I'm ashamed of that I have to more reasonable ones, right? But I'm not going to ask who in the audience here have done that. You know, you might be ashamed just as me. But when you do that, when you take an exam, they oftentimes record you, so that some people somewhere in an undisclosed location can take a look at you doing your thing and you know, decide if you cheated or not. So my procedure, my tradition after taking an exam like that is to send an email to them saying, you know, I took an exam. Please satisfy yourself as much as you want with the video until you're satisfied that I didn't cheat, and then please delete it, you know, because you have used the data. So I always send that. So in this case, I did that as well. And what happened is my certification stopped working. Like not only the ones I took the exam for, but like all of them from that vendor. And I got this email like a bit later saying, we you know, some admin pressed some bad buttons. I did get like free year of qualification, like requalification fee. I didn't have to pay that out of it, but it was a bit stressful and not needed. Now, a good example of surveillance capitalism is this new social network innovative thing called X. I also use Firefox. And there was a time when this was happening, right? You just open it up, and it says you have tracking protection enabled. There will be issues, and that's it. And the page doesn't load. You know, they're just completely direct about that. They're not even hiding the fact, right? And quite a fresh research from this year, from May. This is a specific implementation of surveillance capitalism in system. I believe it was likely devised by a Russian company called Yandex about 10 years ago. And it's using local host connections on your mobile phone to circumvent tracking protection and link your identity on the mobile app with your identity in the web. So even if you're not logged in one of them, they can still connect you, right? This is quite a fancy stuff. I believe Apple and Google are going to patch it or have patched it, right? And it's not only used by Yandex, it's used by Meta as well, obviously, but not for 10 years as by Yandex. Right, so sorry for the wrong order here. But now we come to corporatocracy. So what we have here is a story of how Big Bad App sustain corporatocracy, right? And this is what happens when the system isn't built for you. And it hasn't been built for you for the past tens of years, for the past 10 years, 20 years. From the very beginning, where my relative soldered the computer, well, for himself, but later gave to me, so built it for me, and I could use it for myself, to today, there have been lots of changes, mainly driven by corporations coming in to our online spaces, driven by greed. So I think it's important that we discuss a bit on what can be done about that. I personally am trying to do what I can. I'm just one person, so I hope some of you are already doing stuff here, even before this talk. But those of you who are not, I want to try to put the final touches on what you can do, and maybe encourage and try to convince you that, inspire you that it's doable, right? So first of all, phraseology matters. We've heard both of these terms. Don't be evil was a slogan of one relatively large corporation working in IT. And minimizing harm is something that IT lawyers write in their policies when they want to develop new stuff. So whatever, for example, you work with user data, you have to work with it in such a way that harm to other people is as small as possible, right? Well, you can rephrase that, right? You can actively be good instead of not being evil, which seemed like a fun, but to me personally, a bit suspicious slogan at the time. You can just, actively be good, like, why not? Don't kill people. What? Were we before? Are we now? And minimizing harm is maximize care. Care about your users, right? You have to think about the system in a way. You have to ask the question, are you adapting to the system, or are you making the system adapt to you? And it becomes harder and harder for me to make the system adapt to me recently. Now, these are just some fragments of my life and some disconnected examples of what I do. Now, I use temporary identities, of course. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I wouldn't recommend you to try using that when you get a new passport from the government. But if you're getting a frequent customer card somewhere, I guess that's okay. Personally, if someone asks me for my advice as a non-lawyer, I draw the line and having 1 or 2 customer cards, as opposed to having 366 customer cards, so you can have the birthday discount every day. Then it's probably fraud, right? But having random name, random address, yeah. I also do limited permissions. I would hope everyone here does the same, right? For your devices, specifically mobile phones, you try to limit the permissions as much as possible. Stuff will break. There will be bad apps that just don't work. I have a separate talk about that, that specifically looks at how apps break when you try to stay private, right? And I have been running my own email-based billing system for about 15 years, I think. It's been running great. SMTP is the second best protocol right after ActivityPub. And because they're so similar, because you can be your own boss, right? And only ICANN can cut you off. Or, by the way, SMTP doesn't need domain names, so RIPE can cut you off. I don't know, your ISP, right? So I wanted to change mobile operator at one point, and I found, so there are 3 options in Latvia, basically. One that thinks that all users require ads, one that we're using right now, and one which is considered the best and the most expensive one. It's twice more expensive than the other ones. And I tried to go to them, but they insisted that the invoice is not going to be sent by email. They can send an email notification. They can't even have a direct link for the invoice. They say, you got an invoice. Now you have to guess where to go. You have to do 2-factor auth, and then you can get your PDF. Now there are multiple problems with that. One, of course, I'm used to my stuff. How come 1 million users have to use your stuff, but you can't use the stuff they have? Because my stuff is older than your stuff. You have money. You update your system like every 2 years. I wrote my stuff in PHP 3 like 20 years ago. I don't want to rewrite it. That's one point. The other point, of course, is deniability. Non-repudiation is the academic term. So if the mail delivery agent is the same as the other party, then how can you prove that they actually delivered the invoice or that they didn't change the invoice while you weren't looking? Right? If that doesn't work, which is why I try to avoid that kind of systems. Well, we couldn't find an agreement. They insisted that sending invoices over email is completely unsafe, and if a company would sign papers saying that they want it, then they probably are nuts and don't understand what they're doing, and that would not be legally binding because they're, so, but that's what I do. And it's super easy. So I try to challenge the system, and I try to pretend that I'm on the same level of influence as all these big corporations. And it drives them nuts, and they don't want to talk to me usually. Now, I do want to highlight a couple of projects, because in some audiences, when I talk about this utopia, or rather dystopia that we have, and utopia that I'd like to have, people look at me and think like, yeah, but that's not going to happen. Well, it's already happening. So we have some companies here. Some of them are making money. Many of them are losing money. Some of them are non-profits. But they have, good stuff about them. They don't do dumb stuff. It works. Now, I've added some asterisks there because there are some recent developments that may make them unlikable or unusable or different, right? But Signal, Lichess, as opposed to Chess.com, Mastodon, OpenStreetMap, DuckDuckGo, ProtonMail, Mozilla Firefox, and some others are the ones that try, or in Mozilla Firefox case, have tried to do it correctly. Now, what works and what doesn't? We also can take a look at some of the examples. GDPR doesn't really work. Now, smaller companies, they don't have the money. They can't understand what they need to do like practically. Unless their providers, their outsourced people that they're using can do that for them, they're not going to implement GDPR properly. Large corporations, they have two approaches. They find the loopholes that they exploit, and they budget the fines. The fines are large, but even with the larger fines, larger corporations don't really care. It's just a position in their expenditure. Now, there was a safe harbor thing, which is like GDPR plugin for Americans to connect to Europe. It was shut down by EU in 2015, which was replaced by Privacy Shield, which was invalidated by EU in 2020. It's not really, they replaced it with something, but it's all BS, because Americans have a different understanding of privacy. It's not like Asia, not like China, but we want to send our customers emails. Never seen the customer, bought the email in the black market, doesn't matter, we want to send emails. In Europe, we don't roll that way. Now, right to repair is working quite well. It's gaining speed, and actually US is ahead of Europe, I think, regarding right to repair in many of the businesses. Now, discussion is separate depending on what you're talking about, a car, a tractor, or a mobile phone. But it is something that can work, which means that actually we can change this through traditional means, through lawmaking as well. Now, and then of course you can rage against the people running everything. That's one thing you can do, and it works. In Twitter times, it worked really nicely. You just write some bad stuff. And when I had Twitter account, I was an influencer before there were influencers. I was just telling, don't use that app, don't use that company. And people were influencing, and they were. I don't want to blow it out of proportion, but some local companies were changing their behavior because of some crazy guy on Twitter making noise all the time. Now, these days we have to wait for them to appear on Mastodon, then we can do that maybe. All right. So we need quality laws, norms, and tools for that. Remember, if you develop something, and many of you develop something, now I haven't professionally developed anything for 4 years now. Like I'm in the service business, I do cybersecurity services, but like just for this camp, for team content, I developed a small script to help out the heralds. Now, and you develop something. It can be something unofficial, it can be something in your daily job. Remember that all product decisions are political. You decide, if you're system architect, system analyst, or programmer or tester, you decide in the end, for a small bit, who gets to use your app, who can afford it, and who's left out. by some interesting requirements, like you need at least 2 words, but you know, they can't be too short or whatever, right? Imagine an app where consent is real, not coerced. Support is human, not obfuscated. And people aren't forced to trade privacy for access. That's not just good design, it's an act of respect and of honoring human dignity. In corporatocracy, you're not just writing code. You're building the rules of engagement for society. Thank you very much. If you're going to build something powerful, make sure it empowers, and if you're going to disrupt something, disrupt exploitation itself. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Do we have any questions from the internet? Was there any? Oh, right. Okay, we can use that. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes. So I'm going to give you, if you come up here and speak. No. Oh. It's fine.
Which developments by Proton were you mentioning?
Why the asterisk at Proton? Are you asking why were there asterisk in Proton?
Yes, indeed.
Well, so because of some rumors of the political alignment of the person running Proton.
Okay. Others?
So, according to GDPR, as I understand it well, any organizations should ask as minimum information as possible, which only needed to provide their duties. And I cannot understand why so many organizations, governmental, private, every doctor asks my address. And not only address, but why they all need to know where I live.
Okay, so I don't know if it was heard online. The question was, why do companies and other entities ask for address, even though they should ask only for minimal information, do minimization? So first of all, it's not really true that all entities have a duty to minimize. GDPR doesn't work on governments. They write anything they want in the law, and that is on top of GDPR. So if there's law in your country saying that a government agency does this with your data, they do that. For private sector, yes, well, what really pisses me off is when it's a digital form and you can't write, you know, I don't have that. Why they do that? Well, they look at it from the business perspective. It says there are multiple ways, multiple reasons why you can collect data. And what GDPR has done for everyone except smaller companies is that it made them think like, will I need that data and do I need that data? Now the problem is the difference between do and will. Even though they don't need the data now, company owner in a small company thinks, yeah, I might need it in the future. So they look at the possible reasons to collect, and I think, business interests or something. So they play this pretend game when they think that they're fooling someone, but if audit comes, then they might be in trouble, unless they are a big corporate and have good lawyers.
Yes, I have one more question about the slide with the stars. You mentioned Signal, which is great. I use it myself. But it does require a phone number. What do you think about that?
Yes, so I had the pleasure of meeting the Signal security team leader in a couple of months ago, and I asked him exactly this question. Now, I personally prefer Threema. I didn't talk about Threema with him. I personally prefer Threema and apps that don't require a phone number, but apparently in Signal infrastructure, they just made the decision that this is a user identifier, and that is a problem in many apps, even non-communication apps, that they decide, you know, this is unique identifier, let's use that. Let's tie that to a person, and that's problematic. Now, they have rolled out usernames recently. They have rolled out ability to hide your phone number. I asked him, well, might we see that phone number is required, not required completely? He said not likely in the coming years because it's so in there. And unfortunately, it is used as anti-spam measure, which I think is not a great anti-spam measure because getting a phone number is relatively easy.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
What do you think about engaging with politicians, voting and campaigning?
Wow.
Because that wasn't on your list of things to do.
Yeah, okay. Well, my answer is about 40 minutes long. It's on Kirill.org. It's called non-partisan politics or something. There's a whole talk about how to do that. I've been doing that my whole life. Now, voting, sure, voting is important for democracy to survive, but it is ceremonial. I believe, at least in my country, right? There's no direct threat of some 70-year-old person coming to anyway. But working with politicians is really important. Now, I'm just going to say one thing from the presentation. But if you're interested in that, do take a look at the non-partisan lobbying presentation on kernels.org. It's free, as all presentations there. One thing from the presentation is politicians want credit, and they're lazy. So oftentimes, if you propose something that they can almost understand and that doesn't go against society or their party lines, you just give them the paper, they sign it, and it's law.
Yeah, that's actually my experience. I have done this in other places. So, try again. Well, I mean, like, I just need to work my way up from little West African countries, like up from Pacific Islands to like bigger ones. I mean, like, Latvia's little.
Yeah.
Why not?
2 million.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Round of applause, please. Do check out his presentation, and do check out his website. That was pretty entertaining. I'm sure the rest of it is equally entertaining.